The following is intended only for mature audience. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
Hey folks, P. Basardo here, and you're listening to the Smoke Free Radio Network.
Not only is he my bail bondsman,
Thanks. Everybody say hello to Mr.
The actual only third way in our country right now.
I'm gonna try to actually talk a little bit and maybe not get
some videos. And you know, like a lot of the ones that really
fighting. I mean, in their mind, they're revolutionary, force, right? And I mean, obviously, to get rid of Stan.
It's crazy to me, and I feel like Big Tobacco's sitting there laughing. They're like, "This is
right." I don't claim to know a lot of stuff when it comes to advocacy. I don't.
Are calling this an epidemic. We're in the middle of the third wave.
Such as VSFA, such as Fig Ramsey.
Oh, wow. It's like that.
With any issue, right? Everybody has their preconceived bias, and anything you throw at them might move them a little bit, but they're going to be anchored.
Everybody has had a couple of hellified weeks. There is no doubt about it. Everybody is just kind of kicking back now, waiting to see what the next thing is going to be. Welcome back to another edition of Vaping in the Mic. A little bit of an off time, but this is one that I believe is going to be able to work the best for everything that's really going on. And this evening, since we have had a couple of weeks where a lot of political things have been coming into play, this evening we're going to be talking about what happened in Mississippi, of all places, of all things. And it's a wild kind of thing, because everybody thinks things are going to happen on the East Coast, the West Coast, the battleground states, things like this. And yet something really, really clicked and really happened. So, what we're going to do, if you would, please welcome this evening's guest, Mr. Bill Wickstrom. Bill, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. You're going to have to do one of things. You're either going to have to sit up or you're going to have to point your camera down.
Okay, how about this?
There you go. Otherwise, we're sitting and looking at just like you and about this much, and you look worse than I do with this thing when it's like this.
Yeah, I was kind of kicked back there for a minute. Oh, man, good to be back and good to see you again, Mike.
The same. It's been a while. I don't remember quite when the last show that we had, but it's been a little too long.
A couple centuries, maybe? A couple centuries?
There are times it feels like that, dude. There is no doubt about it.
Look at the color of our hair. That should speak enough, right?
For the people that are just beginning to find out or that may not know you, tell me what it is that you do for Mississippi, and then tell me about you and your shops.
Okay. I got into vaping about 8 years ago. I was graduating from USM, graduating from college, and I couldn't find any work, so I decided to forge my own destiny and open my own shops. Along the way, we started seeing things in 2016. There were rumors going around that there was going to be regulations issued by the FDA. And one of the things that spurred the origins of MSVAA was that Mike Jeffcoat, who is currently the vice president of MSVAA, got as many shop owners together as he could. And we started talking about forming an advocacy organization. And so I showed up there and I was asking a lot of questions, and it wasn't something I was really shooting for. And Pam Robbins, who's up in PBR Vapes, North Mississippi, she basically volunteered me. Hey, why don't you get up there and run? I'm like, I don't know. At the end of the day, Mike talked me into running with him, and we elected a board. And what really drove that entire meeting was the fact, not so much the FDA deeming regulations, it was that some of our state legislators were trying to pass a 68 cents per mil tax, because one of these House representatives believed that 1 mil of e-liquid was the equivalent of one pack of cigarettes. So that's the tax.
God.
That's what the tax on a pack of cigarettes is 68 cents a pack here in beautiful Mississippi. So we got together, put our funding together. We knew some people over in Alabama, and they helped us tremendously. The BEAA, great folks over there. They do a great job. They found themselves in a similar situation prior to us. So that's what formed MSVA, was 68 cents. And if you remember, a 100 ml bottle back in that time was approximately $40. So you're looking at $68 in tax.
Oh,
So a
wow.
100 ml bottle would have been $108, and that's what got it going.
That's a little too incredible. That's like, really. Yeah, I found.
Well, look, let's be clear. Have you ever met a politician that doesn't like a tax?
Yeah, they all love taxes, dude.
It's not their money.
It's one of those things that I know that I've heard this from so many different people. When they take a bottle of e-liquid, like in New York, they took a bottle of e-liquid to show them what 30 and 60 mil looks like, and they said, that's what we're talking about? Well, yeah, dummy, this is exactly what you're talking about, and you want to tax the hell out of it. They don't know. They have no conception.
No. They most politicians you'll find, they run on populist platforms, whatever it is, whatever the current thing is that they're driving, generally respective to each party. Global warming on one side, tax cuts on the other, so on, whatever. Vaping wasn't something they were paying too much attention to, and it's blatantly obvious in across all the states in the nation. They really don't know much about it, so they start hearing these things. They see the media lies. I mean, look at how many different propaganda pieces were published. I mean, you would see an article that vaping leads to your teeth falling out and your gums going bad. That
Right.
didn't get any popcorn lung. I mean, the list goes on and on. They finally found something, through these cartridges, and here we are now fighting for the entire industry's life. We already had our challenges coming up in May with the PMTA, and now this on top of it, and then it's made it incredibly challenging. But going back to the MSVA, at the beginning of this year, the board got together and we looked at it and we said, this could escalate. And what we need to do is, we've already been working with the lieutenant governor's office. He's running for office, because let's go back to 2018. In mid 2018, we had a drug bust here in the state that made us look pretty bad here in the industry. And our attorney general, he is incredibly popular, or he was incredibly popular. His name was Mr. Hood, Mr. Jim Hood. All right, so he's a Dixie Democrat. He's been in office for about 16 years, and he was running for governor. So we were waiting. The lieutenant governor was going to run for office, and Mr. Hood was going to run for office. And we said, our legislation session only lasts from January through April. So we have a very short time. And quite honestly, the less they're up there legislating, the better it is. When you look at the context, 40,000 laws passed every year, between local, state, and federal. So with those 4 months, we got with our lobbyist and we looked at how we wanted to approach the industry as far as dealing with any of the problems coming up. And because we already knew from the troubles that were caused the previous year that we needed to work with our legislators who knew very little about this in order to craft sound policy, smart, sensible legislation. That's what our goal was. And so the board, we came up with those policy ideas, and the board voted on them, and then we sat on them while we started working on gathering data on the candidates who was running for office. But we really had to wait until the primaries were finished so we could see who the actual contenders would be out of both parties. Once everything got weeded out in the primaries, that's when we started focusing on the candidates, because the election would be in November, and we needed to see where all of these candidates stood and start getting all the wheels moving in the right direction. Okay, candidate A doesn't know anything about vaping, hasn't gotten back to us. Candidate B wants to ban it. So we looked at that, and then I continued to develop that and seed the ground, and we talked to the vaping community across the entire state, keeping them updated as best as we could on where we think the candidates stand based on what they've gotten back to us and what information our lobbyist has supplied us with. And we looked at that. So it was a comprehensive picture that to get the vaping vote involved in this, because when we kept looking at 538, you saw that the Reeves campaign was, generally losing to the Hood campaign, which was, the Attorney General I was telling you about. So we said, And then Mr. Hood came out and said that he wanted to ban vaping. Oh, shit. Okay. All right. Here we go. So now we know where he stands on this, right? And we were watching one of the debates between the two, and it didn't seem that Mr. Reeves was entirely sure. He just had serious concerns about teen vaping, which is understandable. There's a lot of drive on the teen vaping right now, as we all see across the country. And so what we did is
go ahead.
So we reached out to the Reeves campaign and said, hey, you guys are losing to the Hood campaign. Where do you guys stand on all this? And we didn't really get much of a response from the Reeves campaign. And so one of our board members was going back and forth on one of the campaign pages, and they had a flash poll that went up where it showed Mr. Hood was winning by about 10 points in that poll. And so we gathered the vaping vote and we flipped that poll upside down. So it ended up being about over a 20-point switch in that flash poll. And we put that in their face and said, this is the vaping vote. This is what we can bring to the table. And at that point, I reached out to Clifton, who was one of the campaign policy people. And next thing you know, we had a meeting with the Reeves campaign. So we went up there as a board, sat down with them, and went over a great many things. And we asked them to clarify it. And that's when they told us, look, this is an adult product, and we don't want to interfere with adult decisions. We don't want to infringe on somebody's rights. And as you know, down here in the South, we tend to be a little bit more guarded with our rights than perhaps other places.
It's one of those things that I have noticed. You get into the South or the Deep South, and everybody takes the Constitution and the Bill of Rights extremely seriously, And I don't see that same thing.
Everybody's lost all of their guns in a tragic boating accident. I'm sorry to tell you, we just don't know what we're going to do about that.
It's just you don't see that everywhere that you go. And that was one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk to you tonight about, how you were able to mobilize people and change the actual outcome of the vote to get to that person that you wanted to have in office. Before you start on that, just so people know, the phone lines are open. If you want to call and you want to talk to Bill for a minute, call 215-383-5752. Press 1 when you hear the lady talking to be able to get into the queue, and then I'll check up on the other side of the screen over here. Now, go ahead, Bill.
Where were we, Mike? My memory's terrible, man.
They say the mind is the first thing to go. We were talking about, you had sat down, you had a meeting.
Mobilization. Okay. For the mobilization, what we ended up doing is we kept reiterating to the vaping community, and we have a fairly large, two fairly large vaping community groups here in the state of Mississippi. And we were reiterating to all of the vapors out there that this is where Mr. Hood stood on things, right? We wanted to drive home the point that Mr. Hood, because you had to look at this tactically. It's a game about garnering votes, and that's. I saw some remarks that I'll swing back around to you on, but at the end of the day, we looked at this tactically and strategically. We wanted to drive home the point that Mr. Hood wanted to ban vaping here in the state. In other words, he wanted to infringe on your rights and take your right to make a choice from you, right? And after the Reeves campaign, that's when we started feeding in that, they don't want to infringe on your rights at all. So we continue to drive that point home, Mike. And that's really where we looked at it at. And we were talking to our lobbyists, and we were crafting our message to maximize the vote. And we were showing that we were going to get out there, because for a lot of us, we vote really means something.
Okay, now hold on. How long before the actual election did you have this meeting, and how long did you start spreading that message across all of MSVA and whoever else in Mississippi would listen? Voting block.
Okay, one of the things that helped is I was on the Gallo show, which is the most popular radio show here in the state of Mississippi. It's called Super Talk Mississippi. And we were able to, it was a multifaceted strategy, because we wanted to get people to see that, that vaping isn't everything that they've been telling you that it is, as well as letting them know that Mr. Hood wants to infringe on your rights. I mean, and we even threw out there where there was legislation earlier this year where they were trying to they were trying to ban you from vaping in your own car, right? You know, you really think the cops have the time to go ahead and pull you over and put cuffs on you because you're vaping in your own car? I mean, it got that ridiculous.
Knowing how some police force in the South are, they would do it out of spite.
Well,
Tell me
not so
I'm
sure
wrong.
about that. I live down here. It really all depends. You got to understand, while geographically we're a fairly large state, we have an incredibly tiny population down here, Mike. We only have about 3 million people, you know. So at that point, a lot of people know each other, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really was helping Mr. Hood a lot, because his power base is up in North Mississippi, you know, up and around the Tupelo area. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at it as reminding people, number one, that this man is going to infringe on your rights and push for a ban, and two, that the Reeves campaign has concerns about youth vaping, but at the same time fully understands that vaping is an individual choice and they don't want to infringe on the rights of the individual. So that's what we kept pushing, and we were talking to our lobbyists, and we crafted our message very much along those lines.
So you had a few weeks. You didn't have a lot of time in between having that meeting and the actual voting date.
That's correct. I don't remember the exact date. I'd have to pull up my phone, but we had maybe less than a month, because the election, I think, was November 5th, if I recall.
And that's what I want people to kind of to listen to, because what you were able to actually do in getting that vote changed was kind of phenomenal. Because, again, a short period of time, but getting the message out and getting people responding to that.
Well, one of the things that helps, and maybe not all businesses can do this, but another thing that helps is that many of the shop owners have a way of directly communicating, whether through email or through text, to their customers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, and that's what we were doing, and that's what we were showing. You know, we showed the Reeves campaign that we have a very large customer base, all things considered, here in the state, and that we can reach out to those customers via email and text. And so we shot out messages that way too, reminding them that, you know, basically it was very simple. You know, Hood wants to ban vaping, Reeves does not. We kept it short and simple. And we blasted that out, and we also used social media, and we leveraged it to the best that we could to get that vote out there. Because when you look at the 2015 election numbers, all right, you had about 719,000 votes total, right? And we ended up with this election, there ended up being, I think, almost 880 or 890,000 votes this election.
Wow.
So you're looking at what, 160, 170,000 vote difference compared to 2015.
That's
right?
an amazing amount.
I mean, Mr. Reeves won, but it showed you how motivated people were to go to vote this election. And as I said, Mr. Hood is you know, he was a popular 16 years. He was the attorney general. You don't get to be that way in a Democrat in a very red state unless you're popular. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yep.
So, you know, that's how we approached it. We had to look at this from a battlefield point of view, where we're looking at, you know, on the local level and then across the entire state. You know, get the word out. It's all about getting the word out and getting good grassroots activism going.
So once you were able to do that, were you surprised that people responded to your call to action, or they actually followed through? Because I'm going to tell you flat out, I know there are a lot of states, and I know it's across the vaping industry, period, is this sense of apathy, or that, well, I'm not going to do anything because the other guy, he's already doing it, so I don't need to. So were you surprised by what results came about?
Actually, not too much. We as a board were not too much surprised, because you have to bear in mind, you're appealing to former smokers, okay? And so the demographics was basically anybody that smokes, and everybody has their best interest in mind. right? But you're so you may not necessarily be able to reach your professional that comes in and gets a pack of coils and a bottle of juice a week, and that hence the the text and email campaign, as opposed to the people who are more avid, maybe like your cloud crowd,
Right.
your cloud chuckers. So, and more of your hobbyists and more of your enthusiasts. So it wasn't really too much of a surprise, but when you're telling people in your shops that Mr. Hood wants to ban vaping and that Mr. Reeves does not, we try and keep it short and sweet and to the point, Mike. And so really at the end of the day, it wasn't too much. They were able to, help us spread the word. And I think that's really what made the difference. I think most of the people, at least down here, yes, there is apathy. There is no doubt there is apathy, right? Somebody else to do it. But when you start talking about taking away people's stuff down here, well, that changes things, and it changes things a lot.
And that's one of the things that I keep looking at is that I don't know if the apathy is so high that people think, oh, it'll blow over, or if they just don't get the fact that the government is gunning to take everything vaping related away. And for a slew of different reasons that we could talk about. We're not even going to get into MSA and all that garbage right now. It's just...
There are some people that think, well, that won't happen here or anything like that. And one of the other things that we pointed out in our campaign was that look what's going on up in the Northeast. Look at what the governor did in Michigan. We were pointing out all the problems. How these politicians were basically saying, we don't care what you say, we're going to do it anyways. I mean, I feel bad. You look at the fight that you have people that were putting up there in Massachusetts, right? And then you have a governor, Cuomo. Well, technically yes, but so what?
Yeah.
You're the governor, really? But so what? What if that was your business? What if you were a single dad trying to raise your two kids, and maybe one of them was special needs, and your business was your sole income that helped you provide for your kids and your well-being, and I decide to come along and say, yeah, so what? What does that really say?
It definitely creates problems because you're seeing that the government is they just don't care.
No, and the politicians, they're looking at their tobacco bonds and their MSA money.
Yeah.
Let's call it for what it is. They're looking at their tobacco bonds and they're worried about them being rated as junk bonds.
And that's a problem. Because
I mean, look at Ohio. I mean, you guys, I think, you guys, 62% of your funding has to go to pay your debt on your tobacco bonds.
Yeah.
So at that point, they're taking, and the bad thing is that, I read an article a while back pertaining to the MSA where these politicians, after winning the MSA back in '98, they ran to Wall Street and borrowed only $3 billion. $3 billion. Only $3 billion. But they put their ass on the line for $64 billion. Okay, now what happens once they're out of office? They leave it to somebody else to try and deal with. Okay, you're looking at an agreement from 20 years ago. And a lot of these bonds are starting to mature. And they're trying to, renegotiate them from the investors who bought them. And in some cases, the percentages on these bonds are anywhere from 6 to 7 to 8%.
And they're looking at, and I'll apologize because I'm trying to read and do so many things, and I'm listening.
Good to go.
Somebody had put on Facebook the other day, like the top 8 or 10 states,
yes,
that received the most tobacco money. And I remember distinctly, since its inception, New York has already pulled in more than $16 billion in MSA money. $16 billion. I don't want to go down that road because that's
California's on top of them. California's right above them at $16 billion as well.
It's the problem that a lot of people don't know. They don't see, they don't have a conception, but here again, and I know this that they are doing to us is a war of attrition.
Yeah.
And people are getting tired of hearing vape this, vape that. The general public has absolutely no skin in the game, and they don't care. They say, trash it, we don't care. It doesn't bother me. You know, you get soccer mom out there. And
well, that's a slippery slope because let's say, what are they going to gun for next? If they take this away, what's next?
That's the problem. It is massively the problem.
And then look, we there's a reason why we record our history. Nearly 100 years ago, we had prohibition. Do you think that stopped it then? No, it didn't. It didn't stop it. No, all it did was give the rise to, a bunch of underground speakeasies. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the point being is that, the prohibition did not work at all.
No, it's never going to work. It's not a solution.
Okay, so now you're going to misconstrue what the regulated vaping industry does in order to try and stop what people are doing illicitly. You're pinning the murder on the wrong person, right? That's a miscarriage of justice. But when you use that to exploit it for, monetary means when your tobacco bonds are failing, that only compounds and makes shit worse.
I would agree. It makes everything worse as it goes along.
And the problem is that when you look at our modern day media that we have, right? They're not exactly honest at all. Are you kidding me?
Oh.
I mean, we felt the pain of that. The president always talks about fake news. Well, we've been the victims of fake news. So I think we can all understand that.
Say it's not so. You're not talking about the CDC continuously broadcasting the same damn message that's fake, are you? No.
No, hell
not
no.
at all.
Not one damn bit.
Now, for people that are watching or going to be listening to the podcast later on, please understand what I'm referring to is that if you've heard about this lung illness material that was brought out by the CDC and the FDA, states jumped all over it in order to be able to create panic and throw their ban, and the public would back them. And the CDC said, okay, here's what the problem is, vaping. And they left a very broad, generic everything.
Yeah.
And it took a couple of months for the CDC to finally come out and say the truth that this lung illness was by illegal cartridge that was being used in some type of product, and it had contained the THC and vitamin E.
Well, and get this, normally when there's, say, an E. coli outbreak, well, they can zero right in on that within, hours to a few days. But for some mysterious reason, they couldn't get this.
Yeah.
I'd like to backtrack on one thing, Mike.
Sure.
It completely slipped my mind. One of the other things is when we sat down and had a meeting with the Reeves campaign, we brought a folder and we showed them the difference between the illicit, unregulated market versus the regulated market, pointing out that we've had deeming regulations that were issued and went into effect in August of 2016. And then we also showed them that you had to meet certain milestones along as time progressed, such as submitting your ingredient listings to the FDA.
Right.
So, they can't exactly tell you that they don't know what's in the regulated vaping industry. That's absolutely untrue. But the media is not reporting that because they want to doctor it to suit their needs, and probably who's helping them drive that narrative, Bloomberg, with maybe $160 million worth plus whatever else he's thrown in to help promote. What is that product he's got? Haze? Is it something like that?
It's been bad.
But I see a pure market manipulation on this. Here, let's exploit this illicit vaping lung illness, blame it on the regulated market while we drive them out of business to promote this new tobacco product, this heated tobacco product. That's how it looks to me. And and the states are like, yeah, well, we're kind of short on our funding because these vapors are, they're taking away our MSA money.
And again, people, it is classic. If people aren't reminded about it, we have a very short-term memory when it comes to politics and everything like that. The news cycle goes through 8 years later. We don't remember what happened 8 years ago. But you go back to 1998, that's when the MSA, Master Settlement Agreement, happened, and states started getting all this funding to battle cancer and preventative and stop smoking, cessation, everything. Did they use it for that? They did not.
No, look at the percentages that they spend of their MSA money on tobacco harm reduction or tobacco cessation, advertising and stuff like that. I mean, it's pathetic. They use maybe 3-5% of all that money that they get. 3 to 5%, that's it. And then consider this. I'd like you to think about this one for a minute.
Uh-oh.
All of these groups, like, if people would pull up, one thing I like to do is pull up the data on who funds people like the AMA and the American Cancer Society and all of these groups. Go look at who gives them their donations. You'll find that most of those are Big Pharma. So Big Pharma, let's not leave them out of this either. Because if I came and took 13 million of your customers, you wouldn't be very happy with me either, because I need you to keep smoking so you can get sick, so you can go see a doctor, so he can prescribe you my medication.
It is.
Because we all know, look, Mike, we all know that 1 of every 2 smokers dies from smoking. We've all hit the numbers, 480,000 a year direct from smoking, an additional 41,000 from secondhand smoke, 521,000 people a year. America's #1 preventable cause of death.
Wholeheartedly true. But we're going to take a break just for a second. I've got a couple of clips that I want to show people that I was finally able to find them all.
All right, no problem.
Hold on.
Good morning, Vape family. My name is Austin Hopper, and I am so excited to announce that the movie A Billion Lives is going to be on a new streaming service. And Erin Mills is from the New York Moms for Kiddos. She actually is so excited that she posted it on her Twitter today, clearly because she has changed her stance on flavored vapor products. And thanks to the education of the movie A Billion Lives, no longer wants to send 1 billion people to an early grave. Thank you, Erin Mills, and we appreciate you changing your position and understanding how helpful vapor products can be for adults. Thank you.
Do you have any reason to suspect that politics and electoral politics has gone into the decision-making, people advising the president that he could lose battleground states if he banned vaping or banned flavors?
Hey, Mike Peterson. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Mike Peterson. Happy Thanksgiving, my friend. Mike Peterson's a good guy. Although, I want to do my impression of Mike Peterson. Hold on, let me find a mic.
Do you have a tennis racket? Do you have a tennis racket? No, that's not it. You need to get a pop filter.
This is not big enough.
Hold on.
Like a pop filter.
Hold on, I got one.
In front of microphone.
Hold on.
This is my.
No, that's not it.
Where are you going? I love doing shows with Mike Peterson because, like, whenever I do a show with Mike Peterson, I only see maybe 1/3.
Oh, this is my impression of Mike Peterson.
There you go.
Hey, that's Mike.
But you can't see the microphone. Like, you can't see the microphone.
This is Mike Peterson. Vaping with a mic. Welcome to the show. I appreciate you, Phil Busardo, being here.
Oh my God, that's so goddamn funny. It is. There's a lot of shit in front of Mike Peterson's face. It's like,
hello, Mike Peterson. This is Mike Peterson. Welcome, Phil Busardo, to the show. You can't see my face. My pop filter looks like a tennis racket. I'm here to play tennis.
Yeah, Mike. Sorry, but you expected nothing less. Did you really think? By the way, this is our new court. Hey folks, P. Basardo here, and you're listening to Vaping and the Mic with Mike Peterson.
Coming back this evening with Bill Wickstrom, I had to throw a couple of those in there. The one that was important the most, well, they were all important. Austin Hopper giving his little thanks to Aaron. That was so nice of him to do that. And Dimitri and Phil cracked me up. But the one that I wanted people to really see was this was just in that hearing that happened yesterday, the day before, that question was asked to Zeller from the FDA if he believed that politics and the chance that the president of the United States might actually lose battleground states because of vapors. Folks, it is hitting home. It is so much hitting home that it's not even funny. And again, that's why I wanted to talk with you, Bill, because again, you were able to get out, get people involved, and be able to show them, hey, we don't want this happening in Mississippi. Oh, see, I did it again. Hold on, don't go anywhere. There you go.
Oh, okay. Unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, fair enough. You know, as they're finishing up their transition now, getting ready to kick off their legislative session here in January, we're going to be reaching out and getting down and start proposing all of our stuff. We have a definitive plan that we want to execute, and that basically is getting with the governor's office, the lieutenant governor's office, legislators, and importantly, the attorney general's office. And we're going to give them a list of who all of our registered members are, because we don't want to be associated with what happened a year and a half ago, because that bust really set Mr. Hood off, thinking that the vaping industry is a bunch of kids that are doing drugs, and that's what we're doing is we're selling to kids out of these shops. And that goes back to, not knowing very much about the industry in the first place. So at the end of the day, we're going to make sure we differentiate ourselves by providing a list of who our members are to them, so that they understand that we are an organization. We're looking at doing, going by the rules and the regulations as set forth. That's already been on the books. It's been illegal to sell to minors since 2013 in our state already. So let's go ahead and, work and build on that. I'm no fan of adding more governor, but I am a fan of preventing people that know jack shit about our industry regulating it for us when we can get a say in there and shape smart, sensible policy instead of ignorant policy like 68 cents a mil.
Yeah. And that's the important part. Again, folks, if you want to call and talk to Bill Wickstrom, or you want to be on the show for a minute, telephone lines are open. It's 215-383-5752. When you hear the British lady talking, press 1. That'll put you in the queue. Otherwise, it'll never pop up on the screen over there.
English made.
Yeah. Now, tell me, for anybody, and most of the main state heads, yourself, James Jarvis, Nick Orlando, everybody that is in the head of their states, Jay Taylor, they all know, and they mobilize everybody the best that they can. However, and some of them do an absolutely awesome job. I mean, the rallies that have been going on, and that's one other thing I wanted to talk about was the rally that was in Mississippi. But for the people that are just the general public that are either watching or going to be listening on the podcast, what would you tell them to pay attention to? Why should they get out and do this? And if you can, in a short sentence,
sure,
what's in it for them?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I have to give a special shout out to Dimitri and to Greg Connerly for coming out to our rally that we had here in Mississippi right before the election. So, that was good to see people pull together from different states and all come together out there. To the individual consumer, you got to understand these people are looking to strip you of your rights. And when they take that, there's no stopping, there's no telling what could be next. If you're going to allow them to take that from you, and they'll just continue to take more and more until, what do you really have left at that point? And most importantly, there is an inherent strength in numbers. The more people they see, right, the more it scares them. That's fact. That is a fact. The more that they see, the more they think, well, my position may not be the right one on this.
Yep.
And that's why you need to be able to make the time. If you can't make the time for your own rights, then, I think we've had a few founding fathers that spoke to that. If you don't fight for your liberty and freedom, then you don't deserve it. And, that's to paraphrase it. But at the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to. Get out there and fight for it and add the numbers. Numbers matter. There is an inherent strength in numbers, Mike.
And that's the important thing, is that people get out. Stand there and hold a sign for, an hour. Get out and mingle with your fellow vapors. Get out and see the vaping community. But get out and let your face be seen with this sign that says, we vape, we vote, vaping saves lives. Whatever it is that you want to carry, get out and let the public know that I'm not going to stand up for this bullshit. Because
not at all.
It is horrifying for the people that are paying attention day in and day out. And we're seeing all this crap roll from one state to another, to another, to another. It's absolutely horrifying when we see it coming back to our state or coming back to where we live, because it's going to happen. Just like New York City. New York City, turn around now. They've got, for June of next year, an absolute all-out ban on flavors. And if the courts don't do something about that, New York City is going to be screwed.
Oh, there absolutely will be done.
But
it's sad because it's all, again, it's a conglomeration of many things between the MSA money, the ignorance of the politicians on this. And I think watching that video that happened up in Massachusetts, that just really blew my mind. Okay, so what? And then they turn around and vote out how they're going to chunk out the money. It's like, what?
and this is the kind of thing, folks, that is going to come rolling around if we don't get out and show ourselves and let the politicians know, hey, look, guys, you work for us, the public, not for your state, for the MSA money, and you work for us.
Well, in theory, that's the way it's supposed to be. But as it's turning to find out, look at PAVE. Okay, have you ever done any digging on PAVE?
Yeah, a little bit.
How in the hell did they get inside the White House? Okay, who is this group that really what it is? It's a bunch of wealthy and affluent wives who have gotten together that decide they want to make a stand on this, right? And we've got what is their backing? Who are these people to come out of nowhere to somehow garner a seat at the table as if they have that kind of clout or any credibility in the first place? And then speaking from a position of virtue signaling, really, how weak can you be?
That entire thing. Now, for what it was worth, the meeting that was at the White House, I applaud the people that were there to represent us.
Yeah.
You go back 6 months, and there's no way in hell that anybody in the vaping industry could have turned around and said, hey, we're actually going to have a meeting with the President of the United States. Bullshit. Nobody would have ever seen it coming. It was a pipe dream back then. And yet, because of the rallies, because of the support, because of people getting out and saying, I'm here, I'm a vapor, I'm going to vote, look what happened. And that's just the beginning of what can be done. But everybody has to do their part.
And that goes back to the strength in numbers that I was talking about. I was right there when Marine One, flew over. And then after that, I had to step aside for a minute. But at the end of the day, they saw, several thousand people there. And, when you see that, it should give you pause. And then you've got people that are telling you, hey, look, you've got some battleground states here. And these people are serious. And when you see what happened down here, and it should be a good wake-up call. Those numbers are critical. Getting people to turn out and show up are critical. Put aside any differences you got. We've got one big picture here, and that's everybody fighting the same on the same front. Period. End of story.
And
no matter who it is, whether it's in your state, it's in Massachusetts, it's in any of the states, Washington, New York, New Jersey, wherever, it's really got to be one team, one fight, Mike.
It is the one thing that I think took everybody by surprise was the fact that the rally that you're talking about, the UVA rally that was held in the Ellipse, drew almost or a little over 4,000 vapors.
I think it was around 4,500, somewhere in that neighborhood. And it was a great turnout.
And you had the VTA, the AVA, SFATA, I believe CASA was there. You know, but you had all of these people that at one point in time or another were at odds with each other for whatever reason, but they were all standing all together for all the same reason. They were there to show strength in numbers, as you said, big time.
They had to. You got to put it all aside.
The impact was just huge, absolutely huge. Let's fast forward.
Fire away.
The UVA rally, the MSVAA rally that was done when the president came to town, where you're at. I know that the turnout was a little smaller than what you truly wanted to have, but the impact that you had was huge.
Yes. Yes.
What was the overall feeling of that rally, waiting for the president to get there?
Everybody, everybody was working together, period. Everybody was socializing with each other. Everybody was having a good time together. The weather wasn't ideal, but at least it wasn't raining or snowing. Yeah, believe it or not, we actually get snow here in Mississippi. But at the end of the day, everybody was mingling and, pretty jubilant about everything with all things considered. That's how we see it. We had, great folks from the BEAA over, Stacey Hamilton, Rob Roberts, Gordon Tinsley, Demetrius was there for TSFA, Greg Connerly was there for the AVA. So, we were able to get in a bunch of interviews. I will say this, it was very interesting. They did drive by in their Suburbans and they did see us. So, we had good real estate right there where we were. And so they did see us in their Suburbans. And we had
I'm going to ask you a totally whacked out odd question because of your background.
Fire away.
You're a retired vet.
Okay.
You did your time, full time, maxed out, retired. In the back of Trump's mind, or if somebody were to look at this and say, here's this group of people over here, and the president is going to go driving by, and he sees them in your state, and he sees them in this state, and does that begin to play psychological warfare?
Well, ask yourself, I hate to answer that with a question, but if you were in an embattled president right now, and you're seeing this, what would you be thinking?
Where am I going for dinner? No, it does. It's got to play. Yeah.
You want a Trump steak?
Yeah. Well, let's get back on the plane and fly to Florida. No, but it's got to play on his mind after seeing this so many different places, especially the rally that was in his backyard, D.C., and then going and seeing these same signs or similar signs, the same kinds of people, the groups. And
that's what you need to do. You need to keep the pressure up. It's all about the pressure and getting it up and keep it going. Hit those phone lines. Contact your elected representative. You show up at these rallies. Make your voice heard, right? Again, it's the inherent strength in numbers. And you just pound away on that. You're going to have to, if you want to keep these people who don't know anything about this, that I don't think they've really grasped that this is tobacco harm reduction at all. This is about converting people away from the number one preventable cause of death in the United States. And the story.
And that's the important thing is I need people to stop and think. Okay, just because there has been some minor success here or there does not mean it's time to rest on your laurels.
Oh, hell no. Nope. Like I was saying, we're looking at going in this January and meeting with all of the leadership and, submitting what we consider smart, sensible legislation, right? and we want to make sure that we make a difference. And the thing is, with so much bad news, you know, the industry needs every bit of good news it can get, whether it was our victory down here in our state or the UVA rally and the rallies elsewhere. You know, we've got to make sure people understand, if you continue to fight, you can win. You can win.
It's the one way that I've equated to people, and especially those that live in the snow. If your car is stuck in the snow, once you push on it and you start to get it to move, you don't just stop and go, oh, it's moving. You keep pushing on that damn thing until you get your job done. It's the same thing with what we're trying to do. The UVA, every state organization, the VTA, AVA, CASA, SAFADA, all of them are going to continue to push. Now's not the time to stop and say, oh, hey, I did my job. No. You've got to get out there and keep doing your job. Keep calling, keep sending emails, keep doing all this because, again, look at what Mississippi did. Their action changed the vote. One guy was the front runner. He was expected to win. Along comes all the vapors out of Mississippi and the people that are saying, hey, you're not going to infringe on my rights. And guess what? The guy they thought was going to win, he's sitting at home sucking on a popsicle or something right now.
Yeah, he's not going to be our attorney general either. You know, he took his shot, and that's the way it ended up.
So what do you have planned coming up for, I don't know if you're doing anything more, any other kind of rallies before the end of the year, or what you might have coming up in January, February?
That's a tough question, Mike, and here's why. Because we're in the holiday season right now, right? And not a lot gets done during the holiday season. I mean, I wish I had a job like Congress did where I could take half the year off and then spend my second year in office, you know, campaigning for office, even though I live in D.C., but I'll come back to my state because I need time to campaign. So we don't get that kind of a benefit down here. But at the end of the day, we need to focus on when is your legislative session? Do you have part-time or full-time legislators that are going on? So if you have full-time, you know, I feel for you, because the people in those states with full-time legislators, those people never stop. They're always introducing new shit to hamper and hinder your life, you know. But for us here in Mississippi, things kick off in January, so I want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row as we head into our legislative session. And then, like I told you, meeting with the leadership and you know, getting our proposals out there so we can get smart, sensible legislation put into place. It's that important, because the one thing I drove home while I was meeting with the campaign was letting them know there's this thing called the 10th Amendment. In other words, states' rights. And he goes, well, what do you mean by that? I said, one word, Colorado. Right? So, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. I said, we can make a difference here because vaping really isn't tobacco. It's not. But we're being regulated as tobacco. We need to differentiate that. We need to separate the vaping industry against, you know, away from combustible tobacco. We are not combustible tobacco. And I pulled out the device and I showed him. I said, do you see any tobacco here? I said, here's the four components that's in this e-liquid, right? I'm not going to waste everybody's time. Everybody knows what the hell's in it already. But the important thing was educating them on the differences between what vapor is and what combustible tobacco is. One of the things that helped, one of our board members, he works EMS. He's a very avid vapor, but he's also, he runs around in one of the meat wagons, you know, policing up people, right? And, you know, really, vaping is very little different than a breathing treatment, you know, nicotine instead of albuterol.
And that's a good point, because albuterol is made up primarily of propylene glycol.
Yeah.
If I am not mistaken. It's not the vegetable glycerin, it's propylene glycol is one of the main ingredients in albuterol.
Yeah.
For people that don't know what albuterol is, when people go into the hospital and they have a hard time breathing, they get this mist of albuterol administered into their lungs.
Yeah.
Been around for a long time, folks.
Exactly. Most people don't know that, you know, PG was actually basically discovered in 1947, but we'll get past all of that.
Yeah.
So looking at this upcoming January, we're going to wrap up the end of the year, get through December, and then hit the ground running and start sitting down with key leaders, introducing them to who we are, what we do, what we're about. These are our members. Because every trade organization, every industry has generally a trade organization that represents themselves, and they have lobbyists for them. Everybody by and large now is special interest. So we're really no different at all in any way, shape, or form. I mean, there's an organization for orthodontists out there, so why can't we have one? And why can't we let them know who our members are? And this is how the industry works. This is the science behind it. Part of that packet that I gave them was from the New York Times article that talked about 2 vape shops opening up in hospitals. Blew their mind. I said, if it's so damn bad, do you notice that it's only in the United States we have lung illnesses here? You don't really see anything coming out of Europe or Asia, do you? No, you don't, right? But it's interesting that for some reason we're having a vaping lung illness here in the United States. And so, we elaborated on a great many points. We were there for a good while talking to the campaign, and we really needed them to understand that this is not combustible tobacco, and showing them the Royal College of Physicians with their position paper and how the UK national healthcare system is using e-cigarettes as their tobacco harm reduction strategy, based on such a high smoking population that they have there in the UK. We won't even talk about their dentistry, but you get the point.
And in the UK, they are allowing and promoting vapor products, e-cigarette products, in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
There are vape shops in hospitals in the UK.
Yes. People can Google it. The article was released from the New York Times on the 11th of July, 2019. Just what? A scant, 4 months ago? Just over 4 months ago? Going on 5?
Right. Thereabout. All right, Bill, believe it or not, our hour has escaped quicker than I could even
Holy
think.
shit. How time flies when you're having fun.
Dude, it's just you turn around, you get engrossed in a conversation, and it's gone. So, wrapping up, tell me what you would want people to know, either about advocacy, getting out, what's on your mind?
Just get out there and fight for your rights. If you allow them to strip this from you, Lord knows what's next. Believe me, as somebody who's traveled the world, you brought up, my service. As somebody who's traveled the world and seen a lot, believe me, we have it so good here in the U.S. It's not even funny. We have it very, very good here. And if you think that the government best interest is taking care of you, no, it's not. Look at their campaign contributors, and then you'll understand who their number one priority is. And don't you dare forget it.
And that's the biggest thing, folks. If you only carry one thing away from this, state governments and others want to ban the flavors in vaping. And if we don't do something about it, they're going to succeed.
These are people, Mike, these are people that know very little about it. And if they're going to legislate it without your input, I mean, you didn't give them your say, so you're just going to accept what they do. And if you don't like what they do, then maybe you should have said something in the first damn place.
Very much so. It has been an evening with Bill Wickstrom, the head president of the MSVAA, as well as having his own shops, as well as being an advocate and a very outspoken individual. Bill, I honest to God, I'm glad that you took the time this evening to join.
Hey, Mike, thank you so much for having me on.
Hey,
the hour, this late hour actually worked out well for me. It's been a pretty long day today. Thank you so much for having me on the show again.
Absolutely. For everybody else, I'll be back again next week. And again, we're probably looking at starting Vaping in the Mic around 9:30 in the evening. It's what kind of fits the schedule for now. But let's see. Believe it or not, next week I'm going to have a guy that people would say is Joe Public. And I want people to hear what he has to say. But he's an advocate. He has no skin in the game anywhere. He's an advocate. His name is John Clemens. And we're going to be talking with him next week about the things that he sees, what he doesn't see, and what pisses him off. So, for everybody that is out there, thank you for joining us this evening, and we will see you again next week on Vaping and Mike. Thanks, Bill.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.